family. I was the first person as an 8-year-old to become a Christian in my family. There was just 4 of us at the time: mum and dad, me and my sister. I'm the eldest. But I saw God move in my family. By the time I was definitely 12, but probably even younger than that, my whole family was saved. Yeah, so, my dad was a big drinker and a smoker, stopped drinking, stopped smoking. Yeah, so I don't know if it was because of my testimony. I think it probably opened the door. It opened the door to God to coming in, because I started going, so my mum was curious, because mum's a mum, who you're hanging out with, who are your friends, what's all this about. So she started becoming more friendly with the parents of my friend who invited me to church, and she started coming to church. Yeah. And my dad said to her, if I recall rightly, you can go to church, just don't come preaching to me. And then a couple of years later, both my parents were saved. My first encounter would have been scripture in school. So like scripture classes in primary school was where I don't really remember a whole lot, to be honest, because it's a long time. It's a long time ago now, primary school. But apparently I showed a lot of keen interest, apparently, according to my mum. I come from a non-church family. But yeah, it was there that I first heard about Jesus. And it wasn't long after that, a friend from primary school invited me to Sunday school, to the Salvation Army. And that's where that's where I really start to remember. And they used to do a thing called Decision Sundays, where they would, like the class of Sunday school, that they would be more orientated to the gospel, I guess. Yeah, and that's when I gave my heart to God. I was probably about 8. Salvos don't practice baptism, so it was a long time. I was probably about 21, 22. We were going to the Christian Outreach Centre. My personal opinion, even though I believe in baptism, is, and they talk about it in the Bible, I've never really seen it as something that's very essential. It's not like essential to your salvation sort of thing, I've so many amazing stories from so many people from churches that don't practice baptism, of how God's moved in their lives and stuff like that. So I've never really seen that. So I probably didn't see a whole. Yeah.
And then the baptism of the Holy Spirit.
That was probably before that. It was at the Church of Christ, I remember. I was going to the Salvation Army up here, and some friends went to the Church of Christ, and so every now and then, every Sunday night, not every Sunday night, but every now and then I'd go to the Church of Christ, because my friends were there, and someone prayed for me one night, a family friend of Kay's. Yeah, he prayed for me, and God really touched me, and I started speaking in tongues. And there's probably been a couple of things. I've had a couple of healings. I was playing basketball one day with my pastor at the CAC and some other people. Landed funny, felt my knee go, it felt weird and it hurt, and I was on the ground, and my pastor prayed for me, and I walked out. So like things like that. I think the biggest thing I've ever seen God move was when he moved. Is once when he moved through me, I guess. I was in Cambodia with Pete and some other people from 24/7. We were doing church in some little village somewhere in the middle of a rice paddy. There was rice all around us, and there was a little house and a shed. And the house belonged to the pastor, and the shed was where they did church, and we were doing church in there. And Pete asked me if there's anything I wanted to say. I think it was Pete, or it might have been Moan. Moan was the head pastor of the people in Cambodia that we were doing stuff with. And God had started impressing on me about spiritual healing. So I started to talk to the people about spiritual healing, and then I opened it up for prayer. And Mohan looked at me and he goes, I think it's probably lost in translation. You're going to get a lot of people coming up asking for physical healing. I was like, well, whatever. But one girl came up, and she had really bad vision. She was nearly blind, and it sounds similar to cataracts. I think maybe not that I could see anything on her eyes, but she was saying everything looked blurry and sort of milky, and she couldn't see very far. And I started praying for her, and I can't explain what happened next. I just no words for it. My volume increased. I started praying in tongues. I didn't even really know. It was all God, and it's really hard to explain. Poor Moana was trying to translate for me. I was going a mile a minute, and when I finished praying, her sight had started to be restored, and then God impressed on me to tell her that it was the next step was up to her. She had to keep on pressing into God, and if she kept on pressing into God, her healing would continue. So it was a bit of a faith journey for her as well, I guess. Yeah, so it was a few weeks later, Ryan came up to Kalgoorlie. We caught up, had a chat, and he told me that her eyesight was fully restored in the weeks following.